Kumlena Black Gemara. This is Tuesday's daf. Tuesday's daf is daf Tzadik Ches, and fascinating Gemara. We'll see in a minute. First rule in the first part. You sold wine to your friend again. So we're learning all the laws. You're selling a house, you're selling a ship, you're selling fruits, selling and so on. So now, if you let's say you sold wine to your friend, it became sour. The din is that the meicher is not responsible. The buyer brought it home, found out that it became sour in the buyer's home. The seller is not responsible. We learned before, Rav said that the first 3 days, it means that already it takes 3 days to ferment. It must have started while it's still in the meicher's house. So we said already that according to Rav, maybe we'll say according to Rav, it's talking about that the Rishonim say that it's after the 3 days. Not like Shmuel that says that it's possible when you move around, when you move it about, the moving itself or your mazel, whatever you want to learn, is what caused it. Anyway, so once it's in your house, it's your problem. This guy has a habit. This guy's a chazak. He always sells wine that's sour. Then I never going to toss. Definitely, it's attributed to the meicher. The imam, but the meicher says, "Yayin mevusim and I'm going to sell you flavored wine or wine that's fortified and it's going to last for a long time." Then chayiv lahamla said us. Even a week later, a month later, it goes off. He has to replace the wine. Till when? Until Shavuos, because after Shavuos, the summertime, the heat, it causes the wine to go off. So you can't blame the meicher for that. The Yoshan, if he said, "I'm selling you old wine," what's considered old wine? Michel Shtaka, last year's wine. Umiyushan, very old wine. Michel Gimel Shonim. In fact, many poskim hold that if it's older than that, maybe you shouldn't even use it. It's not good anymore. If you don't have a proper wine cellar and store it properly. Says the Gemara, when do we say this din that the meicher is responsible? When do we say that the meicher is not responsible? When you came home and you found that and it became sour, he's talking about the kankan lekech. You put in your own vessels, so it's your problem. You come wrong with your vessels. But if the meicher sold you the wine with his vessels and it became spoiled, then it's the meicher's problem. You can say to the meicher, take your wine back and take your vessel back. Even a long time later, it's yours. Why? Because definitely your kelim caused it. And we're going to hold that, in fact, it already was off in the meicher's house. It just took a long time to recognize it. Says the Gemara, so if the vessels belong to the meicher, it's a long time later, he should have said to him, why'd you leave it in the vessel a long time? I sold you the vessel, take it out, drink it. No, we need it. Because the guy told him, I want it for long term because I want to use it for cooking. So therefore, you knew that I want a long term, and it's in your vessels. It's your vessel that caused it to happen. Says the Gemara, what caused Rabbi Chanina? He said that the only time that he said that our Mishnah that says that the meicher is not responsible is talking about a case where it's the leker's kalim. And if it's the meicher's kalim, he said, I want to use it long term. Let's just say it's talking about the reason why the meicher is sorry. But if he said the mikveh and using the meicher's kalim, then the meicher will be responsible. We're talking about it's the leker, the buyer's kalim, and even though he says long term, it's his problem because it's his kalim. But if it will be the meicher's kalim, then the meicher would be responsible. Why learn that way? Say it's talking about a case we're not talking about using it long term. I just bought wine for you without specifying for long term, and therefore, and I don't care whose kalim it is. The seller is not responsible even if it is his own kalim because we'll say it's your fault. He didn't say I want it long term, so the seller says you should have taken it out, should have drank it straight away. Who asked you to leave it for a month? So which is a much more common case. So why didn't Rabbi Chanina learn the Mishnah that when we say the meicher is not responsible, even if it's in the meicher's vessels, since you did not tell me it's for long term, I sold it to you. You should take the wine out straight away. You drink it. Amar of Zarabah, Masnisa Kashe, Bad in the Mishnah. The Tani, it says the next case. If you know for a fact that the meicher habitually sells wine that's off, it's considered a mistake. Why is it mechatos? The seller can still say, just because I have a reputation for selling wine that's off, and you a month later realize the wine's off, you should have taken it out of the barrel straight away. Because most people who buy wine don't buy it for long term; they buy it pretty much for straight away, Shabbos, whatever, straight away. So what if I have a name, a reputation? But the fact is, you left it in there for a long time. Based on the din number two, why is based on one? It couldn't understand why din number two is called a mekatos. So it must be in din number two. When is a mekatos? If he told the seller, "I want it long term," and then it became sour, and the seller has a reputation for selling wine that goes off. Okay, so if the Mishnah is talking about that, we know that he wanted a long term. So how come the seller is not responsible? If it's the seller's kalim, the seller should be responsible because his kalim ruined it, and you knew that he wanted long term. That's why he learned the Mishnah is talking about it's the buyer's kalim, and therefore the seller said to the buyer, "It's your kalim that ruined it." And this argues Rabbi Chiba Yosef. How's arguing Rabbi Chiba Yosef? Rabbi Chiba Yosef holds. Rabbi Chiba argues because Rabbi Chiba Yosef says, "I don't care whose keli it is, even if it's a moichas keli, and even if he says I want a long term and it became sour straight away, the moichas is not responsible. You know why? Like we discussed yesterday. Rabbi Yosef says, "Chamra mazal the moregonim, mazal the moregonim." The Abish is punishing you, and that's why it's your bad mazel why the wine got ruined. And how do you know that thing happens? Shenemar, because we have a pasuk. It says, "Afka yain boiged geber yoher." That wine betrays a person who's haughty, a person who's conceited. In other words, that's how the Abish punishes you through your wine. Interesting way. So the wine became vinegar, even though the seller knew it was long term. I sell you good quality with my good kalim. Nobody got ruined because of your punishment. Talking about that, if somebody has hubris, even over his wife, he bosses his wife around, as Rashbam says. What happens is she will insult him, she will find him despicable, and she'll no longer respect him. Shenemar says, that a person who is haughty, what do you mean below yinava? It won't be nice for below yinava. My love, benava shloinava means your dwelling place. In his own dwelling place, he won't be respected. So you cannot be bossy or authoritarian. He says something else. If somebody walks around, it used to be a special lavush for Talmud Chacham, a special dress, and if somebody walks around with that special dress, he's not allowed in the Chitza Baruch Hu. This is actually in yeshivas, in the literature world. Some yeshivas had a rule that only Rosh Yeshivas allowed to have a beard and not the Bachim. And that was like a distinguishing mark between someone who was a Talmud Chacham and someone who wasn't. So only if you can prove that you come from a Chassidish house that they all had beards, then you allowed. But otherwise, it's a sign. That was the dress that they had. And there it says Elavei Kochecha. So by the Abisha describes Elavei Kochecha, and here it says that that if somebody is arrogant, he will not join the Abisha. If somebody sells a barrel to a storekeeper, so he didn't sell to him. The way Rashbam says how he did, but the way Rashbam learns that he didn't sell to him, he gave it to him. Listen, I'll give you your commission. It's called a concession, which is I am putting my schayra in your store. You're not buying it from me. You're selling it, and every sale you make, you get a certain percentage commission. So what happened? In order for people to drink it and everything else, the takif and the wine became sour. A palga, a tilsa, half of the wine became sour. A third. The question is, does the storekeeper have any responsibility at all? Not. Dinu the makabel. The din is that the makabel the owner of the wine takes full responsibility because the storekeeper didn't do anything wrong. He just sat there trying to sell it, and he was doing what he was supposed to do, and therefore he's not liable at all. Because he has no chelik in whatsoever. This also about Lashoni Baz, he did not change where they put the faucet, the spigot. But if he changed, he moved it around, then you tampered with it. Maybe what happened is the Chenveni's fault, and then you are reliable as well. This is all talking about that what the market day didn't come around yet, so therefore he just sat there. People didn't come yet to buy. But let's say it came the market day, and you didn't sell it, so you didn't discharge, then your part of the deal was that you're going to actively try to sell it. But if you didn't, then then the owner is not responsible. You are responsible. Yeah. Somebody, let's say, they took upon themselves. We learned a number of times the idea of like a hedge, which is half that a person lent the other guy money. I'm half investor and half a loan. So you're 50% liable for any losses for the loan part, and I'm 50% liable, the owner, the one to put the money in for the investment or uppercut. And we learned already you have to give it has to be a bit more one towards the borrower, because otherwise it's the fact that he worked for you for nothing. But that's not the point of it. So we agreed that we'll take 50, we'll share the responsibilities. But then the owner of the wine said, I don't want you to sell it in your store. I want you to bring it to another place, to the port of the Baal Shafar, the name of a place. Over there, we can get even bigger margins. So he didn't let him. He didn't let the other person sell it here, up there. By the time he got there, Zol, the price went down. In other words, they could have made a lot of money here, but he would, as they say, it's better bird in your hand than two in the bush. But the other guy said, no, we'll get a lot better there. But by the time it got there, the price dropped. So who suffers that loss? So they were expecting $100 profit, and instead they only got $60 profit. Now, if they would have got $100 profit, each one would have received 50. But now that there was 60, if you divide it in half, each one gets 30. But the borrower is tying his, hey, 1 second, I was ready to sell it here, and we would have made $100 profit. Now I would have got 50. You decided you didn't let me sell it there. You forced me to sell it there. I want my $50 profit that I could have got. Who's right? So Dinu, the Mekabele, the din is that no, the owner of the wine who did not allow him to sell it wears the entire depreciation. And not only that, because he has full control of the profits, he has to take full control of the loss as well. The only thing is that the person so then the other guy's not taking, we just said before that the only way it works is the other guy takes losses. The losses he accepts is if it's Geneva, if it's stolen, or Aveda loss, normal losses. But losses that you caused, the partner, you have to wear it. We have a question here. What happens before it got there? It turned sour. Right? I want to sell it here. You told me to sell it over there. It got sour. In this case, we say the owner of the wine carries the entire loss. Because we said before, the lekech, if he ended up finding it, let's say it was the kalim of the moicher, and turned out to be sour, the lekech can say, here, take back your wine, take back your barrels. Can he do that here as well? So how do we deal with this case here as well? Or do we say this is share half and half loss? He said that in this case they have to share the loss. Even though, why? Because we're going to say like Abchia that it's to do with a model, and because they're both partners here, this is remember we're turning sour is a punishment for whatever avedis you did, and therefore we're going to say they both now shoulder that punishment. We don't follow with Chanina, who has nothing to do with Mazel and nothing to do with Mazel at all. It has to do with who's responsible. And he said it's talking about the kalim of the lekech, and that's when the moich is not responsible. Or others say that even by vinegar, the owner of the wine takes the full responsibility of Chanina because it's in the barrels of the moich, and the lekech can say the other person can say, take back your wine, take back your barrel. Yoshan older seller Stakid last year's. How do we learn umiyashin? And if he says miyushin, 3 years, it has to be 3 complete years. So therefore, he continues until Sukkot. Wine until Sukkot is considered miyushin, 3 years. And therefore, if I said I want to buy yain miyushin, 3 years wine, and it turned sour before the 3 years are up, 3 years until Sukkot. So if it turned sour before then, you didn't tell me what I made up with you. I made it with you miyushin, which means I want aged wine that's 3 years old, but it didn't make it, because it became sour a month before. So that's what miyushin is. Now the next miyushin, you told me, you told me today I said miyushin. It wasn't yet 3 years. It might have been 2 years old, whatever it is. It didn't reach it at 3 years. When will it reach 3 years? Only when it's 3 shonim complete years. um, because that's the harvest time for grapes right after Sukkah, so that's 3 years. The next Mishnah is a fascinating Mishnah. It gives you a little bit of insight of how people live then. Now remember, we find sometimes the Gemara talks about the word aftana, a palace, a traklin, a mansion, and we conjure up images in our mind that a mansion is like a mansion. And a palace, who knows what a palace is? Go to Versailles, you'll see what a palace is. That's what we imagine. And a house is a regular house. We live in Sukkah that the minimum size of the house is 4 amos by 4 amos. So we think that's just theory, not real life. So let's see what the Gemara and Mishnah spells out throughout Shas when we tell you what these things are. What exactly is a mansion? And a mansion is, like Rashi always says, is we're sorry, we know officers and wealthy, influential people live. Says the Mishnah. If I sell a place to my friend, or if I'm receiving from my friend a place, so I can build a base chasnus, a house libnoi. It used to be the custom that when you married off a son, you would actually build him the house, and that's where the chuppah was, and the boy brings the girl into that house. That's mamish like the Holy Yom Yichud, which is mamish, literally taking him into their house. The Gemara will highlight why only chasnus b'noi, what about chasnus b'tei, and we'll say that generally the boys always live by their parents, and the girl came with him. The boys did not live by her family, lived by his family. And if it's a daughter, ubeis almon is a little bit. The only time that we would find a daughter living in her parents' family is if her husband died. So then she goes back home. So you're building a house for them. What's the minimum size of a house that you would build? What's the minimum size property, even though you didn't specify, the size? This is the house. 4 amas, which is like 6 feet, or let's say 2 meters, by 6 amas, which is like 9 feet, let's say 3 meters. So 2 meters by 3 meters is a house. So you get an idea why a chutzner plays such an important role in people's lives, is because there's no room in the house to do anything, and then, therefore they put out in the chutzner. David Rabbi Akiva. That's Rabbi Akiva. Bishmol says, no, Ref is Bakari. It's not clear exactly who said these words, Rabbi Shmuel or Rabbi Akiva. But one way of learning is Rabbi Shmuel said, that's a house. That's a barn. That's not a house. But in that case, he doesn't say what a minimum size of a house is. But then he continues. If you want to make a barn, you're buying land to make a barn, what is it? What we just said. 4 amas by 6 amas. Bayis cotton, what's considered a small house? I'm building a house for my friend. You told me build me a house. You hired me to construct a house for you. We didn't work out any measurements or anything else. Then stam, a house, is the smallest house, and what is that? Sheish al ches, 6 by 8. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel holds bigger than Rabbi Akiva. He holds the smallest house of 6 by 8, which basically, let's say 2 meters by a little bit less than 3 meters. That's the small house. Godel, now let's talk about a big house, is ches al es. A big house is, let's say, roughly 2.5 meters by 3.5 meters. That's a big house. Traklin, talk about a traklin, like a mansion where all the officers live, is yud al yud, or even maybe a palace is 10 by 10, 3 meters by 3 meters. That is considered a mansion. But we say now it's yud al yud, it has to be a square. So the traklin itself was the part in front of the house. The part in front of the house. The house itself doesn't talk. We're talking about the traklin, is the area in front of the house where they used to sit and hang around. Now the general rule is, how tall are the ceilings? Now this is a big trick. When you walk into a house, sometimes it can be the same, 2 houses exactly the same size, but if the ceilings are raised, you get a feeling that the house is much larger when the ceilings are low. So what should ideal size of ceilings be, which is not what we have today? So for example, if you have a house 4 by 6, you know how high the wall should be, the ceiling should be? If you take 4 by 6, you add the two together, is 10. Half of 10 is 5 amas. The ceiling is 5 amas high. The ceiling is higher than the length, than the width of the house. And the same thing with every other house. It says 10 by 10. It's up. It's so this traklin over here, 10 by 10, would be 10 amas tall, massive. Ra'ayla says kibina heichel. Statement or question, we'll see later. He's saying here, so this you're learning from the heichel. The heichel was 20 by 40. 20 by 40 together is 60, and there were 30 amas high the walls. Says the Gemara, Mr. Beis Chassus is Libnoi Beis Hamazabita. Why only highlight for your son a house or for your daughter only when she's a widow? List the Beis Chassus Libnoi Libita for both of them. Ubeis Hamanus Libnoi Bita. Milsa Agav Ochimashna teaches something by the way. The Loidarka the Chasna Lemeide Bechamua, that a son-in-law does not live by his in-laws. Even though in the Gemara in Arab Psachah when it says that, because we think that we give two reasons there, either because we suspect that the mother-in-law and the son-in-law will have some dalliance, or because maybe they'll spend a lot of money to show off to their, to their son-in-law, the new son in the family, that they're very generous. It's going to hurt the family. So it sounds from there, if you look at the Gemara, that we're talking about the first, the oldest son-in-law, but here the Gemara is talking about all sons-in-law. Sons-in-law don't live by their in-laws; they live by their parents. Like Basira says, which we say is actually the son of Yirmiyah Hanavi. He was born there from the bathtub. So we'll talk more about it in Sanhedrin. It says, "Hey, Basira, Hako Shakalti Bekafmas Naim." I weighed everything up on a scale. The Lay Matsasin, I couldn't find cow. What's worse than Subin, than bran? Nothing worse than bran. The Kal Mesubin, worse than Mesubin is Chosun Hador Beis Chamav. Nothing worse than a son-in-law living in the in-law's house. And worse than that is the Kal Mechosun is Oireach Machnis Oirach. You invite a guest, and this guest brings another guest along, which you didn't anticipate, but now it's embarrassing to send other guests away. And therefore, you're stuck. The Kal Me'oireach, and worse than that is Meishiv Dover B'Tedem Yishma. And worse than that is somebody who answers even here, doesn't understand, doesn't listen to them. It says Meishiv Dover B'Tedem Yishma, Avalas Yilai Uchlama. It's foolish. He doesn't even hear the full thing, and he already has his input. Where does a barn come in? We're talking about houses. We're talking about a barn. But some say Rabbi Shmuel's making the comment. Rabbi Kiva is making the comment. This is what Rabbi Kiva is saying. Even though Rebbe Bakr he pa'amim, that's the size I just said for a base chas is 4x6. That's really the size of a barn. But nevertheless, pa'amim sha'adam for his own children. Sometimes he makes it the minimum size, which is 4x6. That's if Rabbi Kiva is one saying it. Rabbi Shmuel is one saying it. If somebody wants to make a barn, that's what you make 4x6, not a base chas. Then it says further, Traklin is Yud. My Traklin, what exactly is a Traklin? Kubasa Beverdi, like a little house sitting there amongst the roses, full of roses. It's like you sit there, with maybe a gazebo, something very nice to sit outside in Fabreng. The kantir, what's a kantir? A kantir is Shteim Esrei Al Yud Beis. That's massive, 12 amas by 12 amas, which is basically, let's say, 4 meters by 4 meters, 4 meters squared. What is that? My kantir, he said, why kantir? Tarbis Avdani. This is a massive, large courtyard that you find in front of the homes of Sarim, next to their palaces. And it's called tarbis because they hang around there all the time. And they're always cleaning it out with water, making sure that it looks beautiful and pretty, because this is the entrance to their home. Who says those words? If it's Rashbag saying it, it should say Ra'il Dover. It says first Ra'il Dover, then it says Shimon B'Galomer. So who's saying it? So Ikedam Rashbag Tanila. This is what Rashbag saying it. Ra'il Dover Menayin. Where do we get this idea that the ceiling, that the wall should be equal to the length and width? How can you like the base of Migdash? Ikedam others say Tanakama Ketana. Tanakama is saying, I have a Ra'il Dover. And where do I have a raya from the base of Mikdash? And the Rashbag is not agreeing, but he's asking. It's a question mark. What, you're learning from base of Mikdash? Why should you replicate base of Mikdash? In fact, we always say we don't want you to replicate things in base of Mikdash. In fact, one of the answers given, I had a sefer had 176 answers why Chanukah is 8 days, not 7. The famous question, Miss Yosef and Midi and others. And one of the answers is your takta should only be 7 days. But because you're not allowed to replicate with Beis Hamikdash, so you had no choice. So, anyway, so Tanya, we learned others say others say that the height of the wall should be the same length as the beams by the ceiling. Says the Gemara, why Why relate it to the beam? Then just say, okay, you don't believe. No, but this is like the version of Shimon Gamliel is not saying a statement. He's asking a question, like the base of English. Why? So what should it be then? It should be like the width of the house, just the width, not add the width and the length and then divide it into just the width of the house. So why talk about beams? I can tell you because base of me, what happens is the stones on the bottom of the base are very, we learned before. Why do they taper off as they go higher and higher? The bottom has to be very wide because it's carrying these heavy stones, and it gets narrower. So therefore, if we would say we would do the width of the house internally, it would be much smaller because of the rocks are very wide, the stones are very wide. But if you say it's the beams by the ceiling, then the space inside the house is much wider, and that's how high the wall should be. Or we could say there are holes inside the wall, even if it say it's uniform all the way to the top, but there are holes inside the wall, so the beams have to sit in the walls, and we measure the beams. You're getting a little bit extra space because you're including the parts of the beam that are inside the cavities in the walls. So the walls still have to be quite high, very high. So the Gemara, Rab Chanina went out into town, and Rombole and the people in the city came and asked him a question. In one place it says, the house that Shlomo built Hashem is Shishim or 60 amos length, including the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kodesh was 40, and then the Kodesh was another 20. The Esim Rachve 20 wide, okay. The Shloishim Amma Kamase, and the height of the walls are 30 amos across the entire length of these 60 amos. There's another passage where it says the Lifnei Hadavid Esim Amma Eirich, the Kodesh was 20 amos long. Esim Amma, the Kodesh himself was 20 by 20. The Esim Amma Kamase, and the height was only 20 amos. You just said before the height of the walls, entire length, including the 20 amos of the Kodesh, was 30 amos high. And here it says it's only 20 amos. When he calculates in the Kodesh Kadashim, Shlomo Melech, besides the kruvim that existed on top of the Aron from Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlomo Melech made other kruvim that was on the ground and went up to the ceiling. They were, and the span of the wings were very wide. They were the entire length of the base of the room, and they were 10 amos high. So when we count, we said 20 amos higher to the ceiling, we meant from the end, from the tip of the kruvim to the top. My Kamashlam, what's he trying to teach you? Kamashlam will tell you that Lamata Kilamaila, that just like what Bechina should tell you, that they took up no room. Mala Maila, if you went above the kruvim, and you measured the room there, just open space. It was 20 amos wide, 20 amos long. It was 20 by 20. Ein mishamash klum, there's nothing else there. Afla mata, even where the kruvim were, ein mishamash klum, the kruvim didn't take up any room. Meaning, misayeh le Rab Levi, this supports Rab Levi. Dom Rab Levi, Tem Rab Yechon, Dom Zem Mesayed B'dena. We have a tradition of Avesenu, Makam Aron Rekruvim, Eina Min Amida, that they took up no room. You measure from both ends of the Aron, the kruvim, and you get 10 amos on one side, and 10 amos on the other side. They had fixed measures, and yet they didn't take up any room. And Chassidus explains this was the manifestation of the Shekhinah, that you can have finite and infinite fused together. So it's much greater than just having the infinite level of Hashem, but the finite. This is a level which is not limited to being finite and infinite. You can have both together. And we learned, 10 amos on each side. And we'll stop over here. We'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem. Have a good